Good morning. This is Pastor Rick, and I want to welcome you to Mondays at Emmanuel. Before we actually begin our session on Monday at Emmanuel, as we focus in on this important topic of faith, vocation, and economics, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, who is Reverend Wayne Miller. He's been down here before at Emmanuel Lutheran Church. But let me go over a little bit of his bio as we prepare then for our conversation with him in just a few minutes. Bishop Miller served the Metro Chicago Synod as bishop for 12 years after serving as pastor in 3 congregations in the suburbs of Chicago over 23 years. As noted in an article in the Chicago Tribune, and I love this quote, "Just as the Old Testament prophet Jonah discovered his call once he was inside the whale, Reverend Wayne Miller has learned one cannot escape a calling. Lord knows," he said, "I've tried." Prior to following his vocational call, Bishop Miller had a successful career as a mechanical engineer. He has applied his analytical mind to pastoral community work throughout his ministry. Bishop Miller's personal experiences, Lutheran training and insights have benefited the ELCA, his synod congregations, and the church. And I should add, boy, he's really benefited us here at Emmanuel. He's been a longtime friend. He's been down here at Emmanuel multiple times. As a pastor and bishop, he sought solutions to issues that were both faithful and reasonable. He has been quoted as stating, "This is a cherished thing in our identity, that we can do this kind of moral deliberation publicly because we believe that in itself, that is faithful." Bishop Miller currently serves as a trustee at Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and as a board member for the We Raise Foundation. He is also a member of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago, where he also served as president from 2016 to 2018. And Sal, now we want to begin our Faith Vocation Education series and hop over and join Reverend Wayne Miller. But before we move over and join Wayne Miller for our discussion this morning, I once again want to promote this wonderful edition of Christian History. It's a magazine which focuses on all sorts of wonderful topics, but this particular issue goes to the relationship between faith, vocation, and economics. And here's the title of this particular edition, "When the Church Goes to Market, How Christians Have Influenced Economic Life." We have 30 of these, the first 30 people who write to Howard Isaacson or Beatrice at Emmanuel Academies. We'll send you this edition free of charge. So now, let's go over and join the conversation with Reverend Wayne Miller. Good morning. This is Pastor Rick, and I want to welcome you to our Sunday forum on this Sunday, February the 14th. We're just so thrilled that our guest speaker is Wayne Miller, Bishop Wayne Miller from Chicago, and he's going to continue our series on faith, vocation, and economics, especially with the emphasis on the living a life well with integrity. And then he'll build in those dimensions that we lift up here at Emmanuel on faith, vocation, and economics. And as some of you probably remember, Bishop Wayne Miller was here last year, had a great turnout. And Wayne, I don't think you finished that conversation. It was like you were coming right to the end and we ran out of time. So we wanted to bring you back to finish what you started. So welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be with you all. Nice to be with my friends at Emmanuel again. It's hard to believe it's been almost exactly a year since I was there. And boy, has this been a year.
What a year. And so it'll be interesting to see even how your own thoughts have evolved or what deeper thoughts you've had since you were here with us a year ago. But even though some people here at Emmanuel therefore know you've introduced yourself before, why don't you introduce yourself again about your family, your ministry in the past, both in the congregation and in the bishop's office, so we get that sense before we begin our conversation.
Sure, great, thanks. So I'm a retired ELCA bishop of Metropolitan Chicago. I retired in 2019. And that was after 12 years in the bishop's office. And those 12 years in the bishop's office were sort of the end of a 35-year career in active pastoral ministry. I was ordained in 1984, and my first call was actually a split call between an urban congregation in Chicago, and I was also the chaplain or the pastor in residence for a residential center for developmentally disabled children. And then I moved from there to being a staff pastor in Naperville, Illinois, at Our Savior's, which at the time, this was before the merger of the churches. That was the largest LCA church in the state of Illinois at the time. And I was on staff there for 8 years before being called as senior pastor of St. Mark's in Aurora. I was there for 13 years. Wonderful ministry there. Gosh, the people were so terrific, and it was just a very exciting and thriving time for us. We about doubled the size of the congregation in the 13 years that I was there, and it was from there that I was called to the bishop's office. So it was sort of a natural thing in some ways to move from where I was, I think, to being in a position of being able to share some of the thoughts and experiences that I had in parish ministry in the bishop's office. Before that, I did a number of things before ministry. I was relatively late coming into ministry. I was 34 when I was ordained. Before that, I worked in a number of things. I was a junior high and high school music teacher in Iowa for several years, and came back to Chicago, which is my home, and was on the evenings and weekends I was singing professionally with the Chicago Symphony Chorus, and then also kind of working in the business community. I worked in purchasing for a number of years and also in manufacturing engineering. And the last position I had was in manufacturing engineering for the National Can Corporation, which was headquartered here. So all that, I would say, is experience that's not wasted. It's all been important. And it was all, I would say for me, it was all vocation at the time. And in fact, I would say, if I can just go a step further, that it sort of opened the way for me to see this retirement time as actually a new calling, a new vocation for me. And right now, that vocation is, it may seem strange to say it, but it's really a vocation in home economics. I'm really paying a lot more attention to my role here in the home. I do most of the cooking. I do my share of the cleaning. I do the laundry, and I love it.
So you're married.
Really enjoy it.
So you're married? Do you have married with kids?
I'm married to Pam. We just had our 41st anniversary.
There you go. Congratulations.
And have 2 sons. So
wonderful. So you've really started us along this avenue of vocation, right? I mean, you've even said your retirement is part of vocation. You've been thinking about this for quite some time. But I'm wondering, when did these topics of faith, vocation, economics, when did they become clear to you? What happened to bring those together in your life?
So it really happened early for me because I was a lay leader in my congregation at the time that I was working for National Can. And what I found was that there were a number of situations, 2 things. First of all, I really took very seriously the fact that my work was a ministry in terms of the way I was interacting with people. And I found that a lot of people, just in the course of conversation, they found out that I was comfortable and relaxed and easy talking about issues of faith. And I actually found that a lot of colleagues sought me out for conversations because they didn't feel safe in very many places talking about faith and ethics issues that were on their mind. The other thing that I found was that there were a lot of situations I was in the workplace where there would, what I would call minor conflicts. I mean, I wouldn't want to over dramatize it, but places where my own personal faith formation and my own sense of morality and ethics actually came into tension with things that I was expected to do as a good and faithful employee. And so it got me thinking about the fact of what is the relationship, because I took them both seriously. And I took I guess I would say my loyalties in both places very seriously. And then I got into reading a guy by the name of William Deal, who I know you know, and some of your other folks there may know also, who was writing on the question of the Sunday-Monday connection. And I really dove into that because for me as a lay leader in the church, this made huge sense to me. And so that was something that carried over then into my pastoral ministry, in the sense of in my preaching and teaching, always looking at the question of, okay, how does this sound through the ears of someone who's working in fields of science or education or business or finance or banking or whatever? How does this word ring true or not ring true for a person in that context?
And so one of the things that I found interesting in your presentation last year was that reference that you had to work, right? To daily work, not just to the clergy call, your call as a bishop, but to work. It seemed to be a reference. And I love the way you tied it in with this idea of living well or living the integrated life. Because when I hear that, I remember last year, people's heads started nodding. Yeah, how do I live the integrated life? How do I live life well? And how do I avoid a life that's disintegrated? And you tied that together with this faith, vocation, economics. So you say more about that.
Sure. So I think that it is, to some degree, it's always true that people, we operate in different social systems, in different social contexts, with a set of roles and relationships and responsibilities that are appropriate for that context. And it can always be true that the roles that we're called into can give us a feeling of needing to be a slightly different person in this context than we are in this context, right? And I think that is increasingly true in our society, that our life is becoming compartmentalized or fragmented in such a way that only one part of us is alive and really present in each of these many social and professional contexts that we find ourselves in. And what I have experienced and what I've seen other people struggle with over the years in my pastoral care work is that when the conflict between those roles and those different contexts, as it gets more intense, what actually starts to happen is that we don't know who we are. We're fragmented. We're one person here when we're doing this, and we're one person here when we're doing that. I think that was much less true, actually, for example, in simpler agrarian cultures, where the workplace and the home place was the farm. It was one place. And now I think that as we move to a more technological context, we find this more exaggerated. So just to give one simple example, when I was a kid and I went to the doctor, I went to a general practitioner. And my general practitioner knew me. He physically, he knew everything about me. Plus, he knew everything about my family history because he treated the whole family, right? Now I call my general practitioner my general contractor. Because he sent me to one doctor for my toenails and one doctor for my headache and one doctor for my skin and and so all of those people are taking care of that one little piece of me. But I still have to somehow figure out how to integrate all of these messages, because the person who's treating me for one thing may or may not have a sense of how that fits into all the other things in my physical well-being.
So what you're saying is that we're actually different people at church or at work or at home or maybe at the club, wherever we fellowship, that we're not able to integrate all those identities.
Right. So a big public example of this a number of years ago was Enron, right? And Kenneth Lay, who was the head of this really quite, I think, quite scandalously unethical process that was going on in the way business was being conducted, was a very active, highly respected Methodist layman. He was in church every Sunday. How did he get those things together? Or did he get them together? Did he have some way of rationalizing one? Or did he simply allow his life to be compartmentalized, where he had one set of rules for one context and a completely different set of rules for different contexts? In which case, what's the mental health picture of someone who's living a fragmented life like that? So for me, one of the things, I mean, this kind of connects with the idea of where Lutheran theology intersects with this. I think that one of the important things with the Lutheran understanding of vocation is that vocation is not something that just has a specific meaning to the context of being a professional religious leader. That vocation is something that is woven into all of life. And I think then that suggests to us that part of our task is looking for more and better ways to do that kind of integration in our own lives and to help one another with that integration, so that we're not just putting people in that context where they're required to be a certain kind of person in church, but I'm not the least bit interested in who they are or in what they do when they're not in church, because that's the only social context in which I care about.
And that was the critique that Bill Deal gave back in the day, that he said, I go to church and my pastor has no idea and probably no interest in what I do on the other 6 days of the week. And so he talked about that in the sense of being disintegrated. Now, one of the things, Wayne, that you did for us last time is you were talking about this integrated life, living well, faith, vocation, economics. You brought all these concepts together in a model, which I know people really enjoyed because they could see in front of them exactly a model of what you were trying to refer to. And so we want to put that model up. And can you talk about how important that's been for you to visualize what you're trying to communicate with us?
Sure. So I'll just start this by saying that what really triggered the development of that model was my work with you. You invited me into the conversation that was being sponsored by the Kern Family Foundation, specifically on the relationship between faith, work, and economics. And as I got to thinking about that more and looking at it in terms of some of the experiences that I've already shared with you, what came clear to me is that faith, work, and economics are a system, an interactive system. And so then I developed the idea of the three overlapping circles. And then whenever you build a model like that with interlocking circles, that means that there are common areas between each three circles. So if you take faith and work and economics as the three circles, then something's happening in the relationship between faith and work. Something's happened between the relationship between work and economy, and something should be happening in the relationship between economics and faith. And what I came up with in my model as it developed was what happens between faith and work is an expression of our morality. And what I mean by that is morality for me is how we as individuals act in a way that reflects our internal faith formation. So what that means is that every act at work is a moral act. It is an externalization of my internalized faith values. And struggling first with the question of how do I live a life of work that is sufficiently consistent with my faith values that I'm not living effectively an immoral life, not because I'm doing anything, I may or may not be doing anything that other people see as wrong. But if it's in conflict with my own internal sense of right and wrong, it's a problem for me, right? And the relationship between work and economy is that when I coordinate my work with the work of others, I create an economy or participate in an economy. And how it is that we coordinate the work of all the people in a society or in a community is a question of governance. How is it we govern our life together and hold ourselves accountable to rules by which we'll all allow ourselves to be held to account for? The third piece is the relationship between the economy and faith. And I think that as Christians, our faith, which calls us to love and serve our neighbor, means that the economy in some way has to orient itself to at least some degree to the question of how is the prosperity, the abundance that's generated in this economy, at least a major portion of it channeled back into the community so that other people have an opportunity to participate in the community. So when you start to integrate these, that's a question then of social ethics. And when you start to integrate those things all together into a single model, then I think you come up with something that really gives you a sense that work and economics are a major, if not the principal expression of my Christian faith. And the outside world of work and economics actually becomes a way of serving the faith, serving God, by loving and serving my neighbor.
So now I have to say, you started unfolding this model while you were here at Emmanuel, and I think we all felt like we had to give you more time because there was so much loaded into this whole idea of faith, work, and economics, and in governance, social ethics, and morality, and how we integrate those in our lives. And that's what we want to do tomorrow. If you join us live for Mondays at Emmanuel at 10 o'clock, the Bishop Wayne Miller will be joining us to field your questions because we want to hear from you. And that this will give you, Wayne, another opportunity to unfold this model and how we might use it in our daily lives. Do you want to say anything about that? It's kind of a foretaste of the feast to come tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And the other thing that I would just say that's important to me is that it's as a teacher, in the role of teacher, it's always really important to me to have opportunities for people to give oral feedback to the ideas that are being thrown out there, so that they can be tailored and angled and developed in a way that's really connecting with what people are thinking and what people are feeling about this. So the context of tomorrow will be more conversational, will give us a chance to really have some dialogue about some of these things.
Great. So once again, I want to thank you, Wayne, for joining us for this Sunday forum here at Emmanuel, where we're talking about this integrated life, faith, vocation, and economics. I hope you'll join us tomorrow on Monday at 10 a.m. for a live Zoom conversation with Bishop Wayne Miller about his model, about the integrated life, and how this can play a role in how you practice your own Christian discipleship. Again, thanks for joining us on the Sunday Forum. Bye-bye now.